You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 260, Resistance Update. We have purposely held off on really coming to you guys with any coverage on the Resistance animated show, and just because we want to kind of let all the episodes accumulate and really come back with some really well-informed and formulated opinions before we just started jumping in when the show aired just a few months ago. So joining me tonight to kind of break all this down, broadcasting live from Castellon itself, please welcome Jonesy back to the show. Jonesy, welcome back.
I appreciate it. Good, sir. How are you doing this week?
I am doing outstanding. It's Christmas time in the Christmas spirit. I've got all kinds of presents with Star Wars logos all over them, ready to either be wrapped or are in transit as we speak. So it's been pretty exciting.
It's funny. You always think the shopping part's the pain in the butt part, but no, it's the wrapping of everything.
Yep. Everything gets in bags, so it's a lot easier that way.
Oh man. No, if we did that, I'd get chased out of the house.
Yeah, right. And the kids not wanting to, they want to open up all the wrapping paper, which is fine. They just have to pick up all the trash when they're done. That's usually the rule.
Oh, goodness. The things we do for the little ones.
All right, well, let's get into this. We've got, before we start talking about Resistance, we got a couple of little nuggets of news that have broke over the last week or so. And let's just start off with Galaxy Adventures, because we talked about that one. I think that busted out last time, literally the day of episode 259 when we were recording. And since then, we've had a chance to kind of go back and look at the initial offerings there, and they've just released a few other ones now. But you have thrown this question out there about which has been our favorite so far, and I'll let you take the stage on this one first. Which ones have stood out for you the most?
It's actually been the most recent ones. I think the Vader one, the Power of the Force or Power of the Dark Side rather, was really good. I enjoyed that one a lot, but I was not prepared. If people recall, some of our feedback was maybe these would just be a touch longer. You get a little more story in them and they'd really round it out. Well, I was wrong about that because we got two that really stood out and they were still in this minute 15, minute 20 range with Luke Skywalker. And it was Luke versus Emperor Palpatine and Luke versus the Death Star. And oh my goodness, they were nothing short of fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, they had great storytelling elements. You got a really complete story for both of them, especially the Palpatine one, which I think is probably my favorite so far, where you got this really robust arc for Palpatine and all of the great character moments within it. And these flashback scenes were just superb. And it was so much fun. It was exactly the right notes. It was exactly what we wanted. And somehow, some way, they crammed it into something less than a minute and a half long.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, I think so. I would agree. The Leia one was still pretty good too. It was honorable mention, I think, for me in terms of which have been the best so far. I enjoy the Emperor Palpatine one, Luke versus Emperor Palpatine, but I think my favorite is Luke versus the Death Star because that was always my favorite moment as a kid, whether it was seeing it in the theater or when I'd play Star Wars Arcade, the 1983 cabinet down thing, that whole experience that just reminded me of that. But then there's one moment in that little clip where when he tells Luke to let go, when you hear that and the animation slows down. Did you catch that?
Oh, I did.
Yeah, that moment, it was just like, oh, that's exactly what I wanted. Like, we didn't get that in the movie. It never really crossed my mind that that's maybe what he experienced or saw, but that just changes my perspective of that whole scene now. Just that one, seriously, 2-second moment where everything kind of just slowed down. It gave me a way to feel maybe what Luke was feeling in that moment. So I thought it was awesome, but that's by far my favorite so far.
Yeah, very well done. I'm really starting to enjoy those. And now I'm looking forward to what else do they have up their sleeves? How often are we going to get these? And what else do they want to show us? Because I'm 100% fully on board now.
Yeah, maybe they'll just redo the movies, or by the end of the day, we'll have
we talked about that too, right?
Yeah, no, let's not go there. We're going to piss a lot of people off. All right, so let's go to the Falcon exterior is finally done at Disneyland. I've seen a billion pictures. I think everybody posted this picture, including ourselves, But everyone posted this picture when it was hit, or I guess when it first hit social media from StarWars.com. But did we get anything else here? Or was it literally just, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's cool, the Falcon's there, but was there anything else that came with this?
It's just more of the same of how the ride is going to interact or how we're going to get onto the ride, and more pictures of just in and around. And yeah, they had some leaked images, and then Star Wars or Disney, I guess, just decided to come out and say, well, no, here's a legit image that's appropriate for actual distribution to the media. And it was nothing short of great. It's going to be so awesome to walk up to it. And I don't know if they're going to let you touch it or not, but if they did, I'm going to touch it.
Yeah, I would imagine they would let you touch it, because that's got to be part of in my opinion, they can't just throw that out there and then put, a barrier around it. Like, you can't go in like they did with Stonehenge or something. But yeah, that would be great if you could go inside and walk around and take pictures. I'd imagine there's probably a waiting line though to do that. I don't think they could just, everybody would just cram inside there.
Oops, sorry. Yeah, sorry. So here's some of the crazy numbers that we're starting to see forecasted though for that opening weekend at Disneyland.
We talked about this. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but this is the part that was keeping me up at night. Like, I was really worried because we talked about this, I don't know, maybe a year ago, whenever it was announced that this is going to be an amazing thing, and they pull it off where everybody gets a fair share of time, or it's just going to be painstaking waiting for tons of people because just everyone wants to go. But go ahead. Sorry. What's it looking like?
No, yeah, short story. It's going to suck, people. Yeah, it's they think that maybe upwards of 200,000 people in the opening weekend. I don't know what capacity is at Disneyland, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's not 200,000. Yeah. And granted, that's over probably an extended weekend. But man, that is, it just shows you how popular this is going to be. Now, this is an estimate. I am blanking on where I got this from. I heard this on a Disney podcast, I believe. But it just blew my mind that, to get a number to it and to start to think, because if you've ever been to the Disney parks the week after Christmas, they actually close entry into, at least in Disney World in Florida, they actually close entry to the Magic Kingdom park in the morning, usually by about 10 or 11 in the morning, because they reach capacity. Yeah. So they're actually turning people away because they are so busy. I couldn't imagine that has the potential to happen, on an April or May day in 2019 in California, because they just can't physically get people into the park. And then everybody wants to be in one area of the park. So it's going to be crazy. The lines are going to be excessive. They're estimating like 10-hour waits. I think that's probably a bit excessive. Pandora, Avatar, that type of thing, usually max out around 6. And even Toy Story, I think, has usually been 4 to 6 hours, things like that. So it could reasonably be higher than that. But, when I just see what the other trends have been with very popular IPs, even though they're not Star Wars, it's still 10 hours seems a bit extreme. Yeah. Why would you spend literally your entire day doing that?
Waiting, right. Yeah. And I'm looking at, just while you were talking about that, I looked up the 60th anniversary of Disneyland was in 2015, and it was estimated then that the max capacity was 80,000 visitors. That at that point is when they start closing gates and turning people away. So 200,000, my math isn't perfect, but it's like 2.5 times that. So I don't, no thanks. I think we'll pass the first year.
And we're probably going back to Disney World. I mean, we go somewhat frequently, but we'll probably be there at the end of next year. But I got to be honest, I don't even know if I want to go at that time. It's always something special to be there when something opens, and you're kind of part of that inaugural, weekend or that inaugural month or something like that. Right. You get that aura, that excitement. It's real palpable. It's like going to a sports game during the playoffs, and it's in a really exciting moment. You just get these chills, right? But I don't know if I want to experience that there, because quite honestly, some things become far less enjoyable when you're shoulder to shoulder and getting a nice whiff of someone who's been outside in the sometimes heat in the winter in Orlando. No, thank you. I think I'll be patient.
Yeah, patience. All right. Well,
anyway,
we'll keep you guys posted on that, and certainly if anybody gets a chance to go, we'll talk about more later. But if you get a chance to go, if you think about going, let us know. Hit us up. Tell us all about it. We'd love to hear it. So. I guess let's switch gears and talk about The Mandalorian, because we got some news today. Most of this has just been a real confirmation, but it's great to officially hear it from StarWars.com. But we've got the official press release today that Pedro Pascal of Narcos is going to play the title role of the Mandalorian. He is the Mandalorian character. This was something we covered maybe a week or two ago, and it was an unofficial account. But again, today that was released as well as the official cast list. So no surprises here. I think everyone that was leaked or mentioned officially is now just kind of been all grouped up in this press release. But yeah, it's all pretty exciting stuff. I can't wait to see this guy playing the Mandalorian. Anything else from you, I guess, from this press release?
Yeah, the cast looks great. And it seems to have a positive buzz about most of it. And the mix of directors is going to be interesting. Yeah. And we've heard this before, but this is one of these. Now, with TV shows,
it's different.
Different directors happens all the time throughout a season. Sometimes the actors get behind the camera and so on and so forth. So, but you can always tell, or often you can tell there's a different tone or a different style to it. So it'll be curious to see how well this works with Star Wars, because we've had some criticisms. Is that really working in the movie side, right? So how's it going to work with the live action TV show? But in general, yeah, this is shaping up still to be pretty exciting. I think the buzz is still pretty positive about it, and the cast is one that appears to be a strong selling point for the show come, I don't know, next year or the year after.
Yeah. I would, there's some of the directors, like I'm not so worried about directors because they, for the most part, they're coming into, pre-written stories. They're not really influencing storylines and threads and, character developments and all of that. They're just kind of enhancing all of that from their own creative perspective, which is fine. So I don't really mind with directors. It's only when we get like, there was I'm going to date myself here, but when ER was kind of at its height, they had an announcement that Quentin Tarantino was going to be coming in and directing an episode, and you're thinking, holy smokes, you got Tarantino come in and directing an ER episode. That may be different because his style is so different. And looking at
it's going to be a bloodbath.
It's going to be a bloodbath, exactly right. And it kind of was. It was pretty gruesome, probably more gruesome than most of those episodes. But anyways, before I get on a tangent, so. But looking at the directors here, like Deborah Chow, Bryce Dallas Howard, these all seem pretty safe. The only one that I think would be and may give us a very interesting perspective is Taika Waititi, just because he, in Thor Ragnarok, that was a very unique look and vision that he had, I think, for that movie throughout. So I don't know, maybe we'll get some exciting stuff, but otherwise, yeah, I'm with you. These are all great choices that they made, obviously, with the actors that will be playing the main characters and certainly with the directors as well. So I am so excited about this. I cannot wait for this Disney Plus channel. I don't care if it's $100 a month. We're paying for it. So it's happening.
Well, I don't know about that part, but yeah. I think it's going to be a good thing for us.
All right. Maybe not 100. Okay. So the other thing today, as we're recording on December 12th, we finally got the fan awards announced. So the Star Wars show put on this little thing. It was cute. Kind of like a faux Oscar presentation award ceremony kind of thing. And it was short. It's only like 7 minutes long, I think, total. It may be a little bit longer. But they did announce, and there's a ton of fan award, the people that won it. So we're not going to get into all those. If you want to see that, you can go to StarWars.com or go check out the YouTube channel for Star Wars. They've got it up there. You can see all of them. I wrote some of them down. I plan on going back and rewatching a lot of the winners themselves. But I guess if there are three things that really stood out for me from that show is in the In Memoriam that they did was pretty cute. It was about all the droids that had died over the years in Star Wars. So they did it very much like the Oscars, and it was, they got real quiet, and then, the orchestrated music came in. They showed K2SO, they showed R4. I mean, they just went on and on, showed all these different droids that had died.
So powerful.
It's very powerful, moving. And then as it ended, they went to complete silence, just like the Oscars do, and then came right back. So it was cute. It was very well done. And then the other two things that I made note of were the two finalists, I guess the overall winners for everything for the fan awards, and that was Ice Cream to Go by Jordan G and Cody G, and it won Short Video Filmmaker Select, Best Comedy, and Best Stop Motion. And this is really a short, it's like 30 seconds long, short fan film that was made about Wilbur Hood, who is for those of you that know, he's the ice cream guy.
The ice cream man.
Yeah, the ice cream man from Empire Strikes Back. So I won't ruin it. You guys can watch it. It's cute. It's very, very quick. And the last one was More Machine Than Man by Mark G. This one, Long Video Filmmaker Select and the Best Comedy Award. So and here it looked like, I didn't get a chance again to watch this one, but it looked like the premise was Kenobi and Luke sitting on a log in Empire Strikes Back, and they were kind of going into extended scenes that we may have not seen as part of that conversation and dialogue about his father and all that. So, but anyways, I'm sorry, Return of the Jedi.
And a very special shout out to our listener, Patreon member, on important figure in Discord, Utini,
Yep.
for his submission for Orasing and Beckett. It was great fun what he did, and
I thought it was awesome. Honestly,
I loved it. Yeah, I loved it. He did such a great job, and wanted to give him another shout out because it was really cool that one of our very own was front and center on the website and doing something really cool and fun, and was kind of part of the whole experience. So, congratulations, Utini. We're real proud of you, and hey, do some more, Bubba. Let's see it.
All right. Well, that's all we had for the news. So let's talk some Resistance. So the way we kind of wanted to approach this is really reflect on we purposely pushed this out a little bit further because we want to make sure that we got in the very last episode before the show went on its winter break. And as of right now, the latest I've seen is that they are coming back in January. We don't know exactly when that date is just yet, or how many more episodes we'll get. It's probably safe to assume that we'll probably get somewhere in the 20 to 24 range ballpark, plus or minus if they combine, a couple of episodes to make a longer one kind of thing. But we purposely held off on doing any kind of Resistance coverage just because we wanted to make sure that we had a good amount of work to kind of review and put a good retrospective on. So let's talk about what they've done so far. And I called this Tale of the Tape, but really we've got it premiered on October 7th. We've got 11 episodes so far, with the most recent being Station Theta Black, which aired just a few days ago on the 9th, which I'll just stay out the gate because you're going to hear me talk about this one. That was probably the best one. It was, to me, it was head and shoulders above all the rest of them. But in addition to that, they've done a lot of really cool stuff, like behind the scene BTS type stuff. And first off, with Resistance Rewind, they've got 11 episodes there. And this was kind of similar. Jonesy, have you had a chance to watch these? Because they're very similar to Rebels Recon. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, they have some similarities. These are ones that I end up having to catch up on because I just don't have the time to make up to do them. So I watched the first, I think, one or two of Resistance Rewind and even Bucket's List. But since then, I'm behind. So if there's some nice tidbits, it'd be nice to hear about it.
Yeah, there are some really, really good stuff. And nothing, we haven't had any big shoe drops or spoilers and anything like that, but it's just more context, more background, literally behind the scenes type stuff on how some of these characters came about, why they do the things they do, that sort of thing. So those have been great. All 11 episodes have been great so far. They've also got something called the Bucket. They've got it called Bucket's List, which is, Bucket, the robot itself, or the droid. And there's 30 of these things that are found on StarWars.com that fall under Bucket's List. There's probably maybe about 15 or 16 that are truly just Bucket's List. And that may not sound very clear, and it's really not. But when you go do a search on StarWars.com for Bucket's List, you get 30 episodes. Of those 30, there's probably 15 that are very specific to the Easter eggs. And that's really what this is about. So Bucket's List is kind of a 1 minute and a half preview or review of the show, and they're giving you insight into a lot of the Easter eggs that are found in Star Wars Resistance. And it's everything.
That's fun.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, there's everything. I'm going to talk about some of these a little bit later, and give you some really good examples or some fun examples that came out. But when you watch the show, sometimes it feels like this is my opinion, and I'll get to this too in a little bit later, but it feels like this show really could be anywhere, that it's just another science fiction type cartoon and not necessarily set in Star Wars. And then when you go back and rewatch them, you realize that you just glance right over a lot of these Easter eggs that they threw in there. And I'm not talking about stuff from Force Awakens or Last Jedi. There's a lot of stuff that's packed in here from the original trilogy. Haven't had a lot of prequel trilogy, but there was some stuff in there from Han Solo or the Solo movie. So they've really just kind of picked and choose. There was some Rebel stuff in there as well. Clone Wars is in there. But, again, there's all these little Easter eggs in there, and that's what Bucket's List is for. It's kind of just it's kind of throwing them in your face and making sure that you understand and see what exactly you may have missed. So,
well, I like that they do that, though, because it helps. A lot of the fandom will do this on its own, but it's nice to get a little bit of confirmation of these are the things that you should look for. And it's, it's kind of like a little cheat sheet behind the scenes of, hey, did you catch this? Did you catch that? And it's good for, I think it makes it for interesting rewatch ability of these shows.
Yeah.
And, kind of digging in and getting people to, just dive a little deeper into it. I think that could be a lot of fun.
And then the last thing they've done is a very recent thing, as a matter of fact. They've got something called Star Wars Resistance Shorts. And this is on the Star Wars Kids channel. They've got some on there, and they've got it on their Disney channel or Star Wars channel as well on YouTube.
Yeah, I saw the first 2 on there, but I didn't realize they had extras.
Yeah, there's only 3, like I said. And I don't know. The best way to describe this is kind of like they're almost like scenes that were cut out, or just little 1.5 minute shorts that they put together with the, actual animation, the voice actors, it's them. And they've just done this additional footage that really doesn't play into any main story or anything like that. They're just these cute little 1.5 minute videos kind of thing. So yeah, they're interesting. Again, it's just more stuff for you to take in and absorb and digest from. But overall, I think they've done a pretty good job of giving you lots of content for the show, and more than I think we've seen with, I guess, Rebels and certainly with the Clone Wars. So any thoughts on, I guess, all this extra stuff that we've been getting from the Resistance show?
Well, content is king. And so it's nice that they're continuing to create more content, not necessarily rehash what they have, and shedding better light on it. I think I appreciate that type of thing, especially the behind the scenes. If you can get a little glimpse into the actors, or if you can get the Easter eggs, I think those are fun. I think those are the things that we would come to expect. It's kind of like having a Blu-ray edition for your TV show.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always nice to have, even if you binge watch them, or you watch them after every episode. That sounds like your family probably does. But even going back and watching them all in bulk, it's really cool to kind of do that, and then be able to cherry pick the episodes you want to go back and watch and say, oh, I didn't catch that. Let me see if I can actually see it this time. And, it makes it fun for the next episode that comes out of, can I catch some of the things that they're working on? So I think these are good things. You can never complain about, too much content when it's this little minute and a half type of thing.
Yeah, I like the bonus feature analogy there. And certainly if you're a fan of Resistance, or even if you're just a casual viewer, I think you owe it to yourself to go out and take a look at Bucket's List and the shorts, and especially Resistance Rewind if you have not had a chance to do it. There's always some good stuff in there, and they're all very well done.
Bucket's List, I definitely recommend the Bucket's List. That's a good one. Yeah. I've enjoyed those that I've seen.
So I thought what we could do then is, before we get into the highs and lows and the characters and stuff like that, maybe just talk about overall. And I call this presentation, there's probably a better word for it. You probably have a fancier word for it, but really I want to talk about, just kind of touch base and provide some thoughts and feedback on, the animation, the voice acting, that kind of thing. And we'll start with the animation, because I'm still a fan of it. I mean, I think there are a number of fans who really love the animation that we're getting. And those that are opposed to it are kind of a very small minority, at least by my account. And I'm not saying there aren't viewers out there who generally, sincerely, respectfully don't like the animation, because I actually have a very close friend of mine who is not the biggest fan of it at all. But I've never heard him actually say that he hates it, right? It's just kind of, he could take it or leave it kind of thing. I think my only criticism really with the animation is that we haven't seen a whole lot of variation in terms of like warm and, cold tones, I guess, or light and dark, if you will. Station Theta Black, the most recent one, notwithstanding, most of these episodes continue to be like very bold. They're very colorful. They're very bright. And that's not a bad thing. That's not criticism at all. I think it reflects the point in time in which the show takes place, and certainly the location, but it doesn't have that gritty, dark, rough kind of look that we got definitely not from the original trilogy. And then even in the Clone Wars and sometimes in Rebels, I don't think we get that. Now that said, I think all that will correct itself. I think, again, we're looking at a very small piece of a long-term kind of plan. I think over time we'll start to get some of that, as, new plot lines kind of flesh themselves out. So what are your thoughts, I guess, on overall on the animation? I know we both went into this really pretty hyped up about it and really loved what we were seeing. You still loving what you're seeing?
Yeah, I still like it. My original criticism is still there, though, and it speaks directly what you're talking about. In the darker scenes, you still have this very vivid image. Yeah. It's still very colorful. It's very saturated. You don't get the impact of the shadows just isn't there. And so it's still, I think it's getting a little bit better, or maybe I'm just getting conditioned to where it's not as obvious to me. But early on in those episodes, it was very obvious that the shadows and the lighting, it was just a bit too much. It was always like there was a nice big bright light on every character. I'm okay with the smoother faces and the kind of the more cartoonish, anime-ish type of feel. I think that looks good. I think it's working for the show in general. The Station Theta Black is a good one though, because this is where I thought they took a step forward when I saw Phasma's armor this time.
Oh, it was shines.
Beautiful.
I mean, no pun intended, but
no, it was. I mean, it was great. You had very interesting lines, the reflections, the way that the lighting worked on it. It was just, I paused and just wanted to look at it. Yeah. It looked great. And
we see that with Pyre too. His I mean, he's got the gold armor, but there are moments in there.
This is interesting. Yeah, his is interesting because you can like see specks in it too that are. It's less clear if it's intended or if those are imperfections or if it's just a different angle and just the way that it kind of shows up.
There's so many fingerprints on our
little things in it.
Sorry, I was going to say there's so many fingerprints on our TV. I would not have caught the little specks. So I'm glad you pointed that out. I'll have to go back and look at that.
Nice. Well, I'm watching a lot of these on my iPad, so my face is like right up on the screen too. So, but Phasma's armor I thought looked amazing, and especially in this one where you had some closer shots and the lighting was a little bit darker on the station, and so you really didn't have anything else to look at. It had the stark white stormtroopers behind her as well. And I'm liking that dynamic. I like looking at the First Order troopers in general. I think they're working really well with the animation style, a little bit better than how Rebels did. And part of that's because I'm a really big fan of kind of the sequel trilogy armor. I think it looks really, really great.
Yeah. Yeah.
But overall, animation's still working. The movements, when they get a little crazy, like Kaz of course, still look a little jarring, a little odd. But then again, it's a Y7 show.
Yeah, well, I kind of chalked that up to more of they were going after an anime type style. And again, I'm not a huge follower of anime, but there are moments when you watch anime and the characters make these really weird, poses, or they contort their bodies in a certain way. And we see that with Kaz, right? A lot. He tends to be like, overly dramatic features, or his features are overly dramatically drawn at times. And I think maybe, I don't know if that's what you're speaking to, but I always just chalk that up to is, okay, they said from the beginning, this is supposed to be World War II meets anime, and maybe that's just the anime aspect of it. So I don't know. I definitely know what you mean, though. I definitely know what you mean, because sometimes you see that and you're like, that seems a little too childish, but again, it's Y7, so it's probably right in line with what they want. So let's talk about the voice acting, because here, I mean, it's very strong. I mean, and strong's probably not even a strong enough word, to be honest. They've got some really A-list talent contributing already with Christy and Isaac, but everyone else, whether they're a main character or even just characters like the Chilidae, those turtle guys. I mean, they got freaking Frank Welker, to play him. And all he does is make a bunch of grunting noises. So they've got these really prominent voice actors, even doing some of these lower character types. So they've got great talent, I guess, behind them. I think Christopher Sean, honestly, is doing an amazing job with Kaz. I think he's making that character his own. Love him or hate him, or whatever your opinion of Kaz himself. I think that there's no doubt about that is a very unique character. It stands out even in amongst all the other kind of the funny characters in this show. We had Elijah Wood on there, who was Jace Rucklin. Even though I wasn't the biggest fan of that particular episode, I thought he did an outstanding job playing that character. But I guess, what are your initial thoughts before we talk about Leia? What are your initial thoughts, I guess, on the voice acting?
Scott Lawrence sounds amazing as Yeager. And he's probably my favorite so far. I do agree with you about Christopher Sean, though, because or is it Sean Christopher? Sorry, I was getting it backwards. But he has a really great range. He has these moments where you're right, he is way over the top, but he also has these great moments where he can actually channel the character's emotion and give a great performance in those type of moments too. So it is really a great range. I'm really enjoying anytime like Tam is on the screen.
Yeah.
And I don't really know what it is about the character, but I love the voice acting. It matches up with what we see on screen, and it's such a great character. But
I think it's the contrast of between Kaz and then her maturity, right? Like they offset each other. I guess they balance each other out. Not to get real corny here, but I think they do really balance each other. They're out. She kind of grounds him at times whenever they get into conversations, and I think it's just that mature aspect of her. But I agree. When she's on there, she almost gets like she's like a presence, if you will, when she's when you hear her voice.
And Captain Doza, the acting there has been fantastic. I really like that character more and more. Uncertainty about, you start to feel some, kind of the weight that's on him, and it really comes across in the acting.
Yeah, we'll talk about
it. Reminds me, I haven't looked to see who he is, but his voice sounds like Elena of Avalon, like the grandfather there. It just shows to have a young daughter, but it sounds like maybe the same voice actor. So maybe Disney's sharing voice actors.
If you want me to bust out into the theme song of Elena of Avatar, I can certainly do that. Avalar, sorry.
Oh yeah, I know them all too, brother.
But no, yeah, you're right. I think every one of these guys and girls have been pretty outstanding. Let's talk about Leia though, because we didn't really touch on this, or maybe we did. I don't remember now.
I don't think we did much.
So yeah, you pointed this out, and I want to give you credit, even though people may say that they pointed it out first. You pointed it out before anybody else hit it on social media. I think that night you were posting, as soon as it was over, you had taken a screenshot or something and said that Carolyn Hennessy was now playing her, and she had replaced Rachel Butera. But I think Carolyn's done a fine job, honestly, and that's no easy task to kind of, one, you're coming in to play Leia, two, you're coming in after some controversy after what Butera did. I think Rachel had more of the raspiness, like natural raspiness or natural sound there, if you will, for Leia, but no complaints in terms of what, Carolyn Hennessy's done. And to be frank, I've always been of the opinion that the characters are bigger than the actors. And we talked about this at some point when we were talking about Last Jedi and Leia, and after Carrie Fisher died, but I think the characters really are bigger than the actors themselves. But having more Leia on the screen is just a bonus. So no matter who's doing it, I don't care. I mean, heck, put Bobby Moynihan in there and let him do the voice. I'd totally be fine with it at this point. But what'd you think about Leia? I guess the new Leia 2.0, if you will.
Well, while I can't take credit for being first, that was a screenshot I got from online or from a tweet that I saw. I knew that she was taking over for Rachel Butera, but someone else did all of that. So to give credit where it's due, and you can see that in Discord. But anyway, she did fine. It was different. It was different. And there are a couple of times where she hits the right notes to where she actually sounds like Carrie Fisher from The Last Jedi and from Force Awakens. Most of the time she sounded different, but it was still working well enough. It's a different take on the character. You're not going to simulate every voice verbatim. And is it a little distracting? A little bit. But this is also one of these things, if we get more time with the character, it will become a little more second nature and we'll be a little more flexible with the voices. I thought that with Rebels as well. Some of the voice acting for Leia when she was younger, it didn't really line up as well either with what I had in my head, but it worked and it was fun and it worked well enough. I haven't seen as much of Forces of Destiny, but from what I'm hearing, it's a lot more of the same.
So what I'm hearing is not everybody can be Steve Stanton.
No.
Yeah.
Not everybody can be Mark Thompson and do it all either.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
All right. Well, yeah. So no harm, no foul there. I think she's doing a fine job. Honestly, the story works. It wasn't distracting enough for me that I was like focused on it. I think I was initially just because I was trying to listen for it, but after she got going, it was like, okay, yeah, that's Leia. It's fine.
No, and that's a great way to put it. I agree with you completely.
Yep. So I want to talk about the soundtrack, and I'm going to feel like the worst fan for saying this, but I've had a hard time coming up with any thoughts one way or the other around the soundtrack. And I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing, or maybe that's telling of itself, but
it's really subtle.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. Michael Tavera is the guy that's behind the music. And, maybe I'm being too harsh given that we were spoiled for so many years with Kiner's work on Clone Wars and then Rebels that I just don't know that I really have a strong opinion of the music one way or the other. It's forgettable, I guess. I can't even think of the music. Even as I was doing the research, like even when we were watching, I went back and rewatched a lot of these episodes and had it on my mind that I was going to make some notes about the soundtrack. And when, I get through all my notes and I'm like, well, crap, I didn't even write anything about it because either it didn't stand out or I just forgot. So anyways, I don't know. Am I on missing something here?
It is really, really subtle. And there's a couple moments where I have noticed it. And oddly enough, is a Leia scene in one of the most recent episodes where Kaz is formally introduced to Leia.
Yeah, I heard
and
that.
You do get, you get her theme really briefly and really in kind of an odd or a different way. And we've had that with the Force theme a couple of times as well. I think mostly in the X-Wing battles, more of the exciting moments. But you're right, it is very much behind the scenes. It's not the large fanfare that we're used to with the movies and these large epic moments where you have a swell of music and emotion.
Mm-hmm.
It's there. I think it's good. It's solid. It's working. TV shows typically don't have a really crazy, robust soundtrack that you're going to go and hum the tune every day or whatever you hear. So I think this isn't exactly, different. I'd have to go back and rewatch some of the Clone Wars and some of Rebels to see if that really popped out to me. Those are really stand out because you actually had a theme music up front for Clone Wars.
Yeah. So
I think some of that is more, it was more in your face because you had the big announcement of this and you had the differentiation of the theme from what we had with John Williams' score. And so those things stood out more. But even with Rebels, it was more like Resistance. You don't have a theme song for the most part. You just have here's the logo and you get a little bit of fanfare and that's about it. And Resistance takes that to an even more minimal level to where you don't have, and that changes every week. If I recall, like the music isn't the same with the Resistance logo when it comes on. So I think some of that is just not there's no rhythm to it. It's there, it's good, but it's kind of TV show music, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have to go back and listen again. I'm with you there. I think with Rebels and the Clone Wars, we ended up getting soundtracks from those, albeit they were limited. They weren't, complete. I don't think they've done anything really that comprehensive in terms of releasing all of the music that Kiner did. But he did have some pieces in there. And to be fair, just to put that, I guess, or maybe just to put things in perspective, a lot of the standout moments that I had with Kiner in Clone Wars and Rebels were when we had these very unique and big movements or moments, I should say, in the episodes. He had music that accompanied that. And in the music,
like Ahsoka.
Yeah, exactly. Like that stuff stood out, right? But to be fair, we just haven't really had much yet, right? It's 11 episodes in. We haven't had a big cliffhanger moment yet. The closest I think we had was Leia. And like we said, that kind of stood out just because it was, they made it stand out in that moment of silence as he was kind of walking up to her. So I still view the Clone Wars music as something else entirely, because that was a product of that very unique moment for Star Wars fandom of not being on Fox, being on Warner Brothers, and a completely different theme than we had ever experienced. And so I think the music was much more front and center for Clone Wars than maybe it is, maybe a little bit with Rebels, and definitely maybe as it is with Resistance. Yeah, that's a good point. And then the other thing I was just kind of to kind of wrap this little piece up here was the sound effects, which I mean we're not getting weird sounds off this or anything off-putting by any means. So everything is very genuine. It's been the complete opposite of anything that's unfamiliar. They've gone through great lengths to ensure that all of the sound effects are 100% Star Wars. And if I could just point out one that really stood out, and this is and it didn't dawn on me, and it wasn't until I watched Bucket's List that I was like, oh my goodness, how did I freaking miss that? There is a moment in there in the most recent episode, and again, Station Theta Black, where Poe is looking for Kaz's ship, and he turns on his sensors in the X-Wing. Yep. And if you listen closely, it's the exact same sound effect that we hear from Rogue 2's ship when he's searching on the surface of Hoth, trying to find Han and Luke. I did not catch it at first because I was so tied up in the episode. And then when I went back, and then as soon as I watched that Buckets List, I went back and played it. I was like, oh my goodness, if it was a snake, it would have bit me, because they pulled it right out of the movie, which is so awesome. I love that they do that. They're not going back and recreating where they don't have to. They're just going back and borrowing, going, oh, we've had a sensor, this kind of a scenario before. Let's just pull from that. And sure enough, it's beat for beat, that same sound effect. So
and they've pulled from the Falcon sounds as well.
Yeah.
So I've heard some of the beeping and the noises from the Falcon inside the X-Wing cockpits is where I've heard many of them, like the one you were describing. But yeah, they're definitely borrowing, and I'm hearing a lot of original trilogy sounds. And I don't know if that's just because those are so ingrained into my head, or if it's really because they're that front and center. So I don't know, or if maybe I don't recall some of the prequel trilogy sounds quite as much, but yeah, these are definitely, it's cool they're bringing them forward. Some are a little too obvious and they don't, I'm a little critical. Maybe they don't fit because I'm remembering what they were previously, but it was really cool that they used the one from Hoth in particular. Yeah. And I think we've had some probe droid sounds as well in some of the other episodes that they've reused for various things. But the sound effects they're so important to Star Wars, and they're using the catalog. They're using it well. It's applying in the right spots for the most part, and it's all spot on. So you're getting the audible side of this to where it sounds like Star Wars should sound like. Yeah,
they've done a really outstanding job here. So yeah, kudos to them for all of the sound effects and so far what they've done. So
Matthew Wood's doing this show, right?
Yeah, he is.
Okay, yeah, so that makes sense.
I'm trying to think what I thought he voiced something too from the show, if I'm not mistaken. I have to go check that. He may have done something. Maybe I'm conflating it with something else. No, yeah, he plays Elo Asti, which we'll come to in a minute. He actually did the voice for him. So anyways, because I actually have a note on him, so I want to come back to him. But so let's talk about the lowlights. And I said lowlights. I was trying to be very nice here. I guess maybe to put it a different way, what are some of the things that maybe we didn't like so much so far about the first 11 episodes? And then we'll talk about the positive and talk about some of the highlights. So what are your, I guess, what are some of the lower points or things that you haven't really, gelled with you just yet?
Yeah, I mean, the antics are part of it. That's kind of semi-character related, but generally some of the silliness, but that's kind of to be expected. And so I don't want to dwell too much on that. I don't really have too many like really, really low points though. I think some of the station things that are going on and the general story is taking a while to ramp up a little bit more and to give us the direction or the path. And I think that's probably the part I'm a little more critical about. Not that we need to see Kaz being a spy all the time, but it kind of comes and goes. It doesn't really feel, it's not gelling quite yet. Mm-hmm. And we're having some great, we're having some really good moments as we get into the show and get more familiar with it. But I'm still trying to see that general path, and it's starting to get a little bit clearer. So it's getting its feet under it. And it's really difficult to call them all lowlights because we're so early in the show.
Yeah.
You hate to be overly critical when they've got a lot of grounding to do, introduce characters, introduce scenarios, introduce, what are the challenges is all of these characters are facing? What are the environments they're facing? And so I try not to be too critical yet until we've got a bigger body of work. But those are a couple of the things that I'd like to see continue to improve on.
Yeah, that's fair. So I want to be objective here. And again, to put things in context, to your point earlier, it's still early, but some of the things that I feel like, again, for the first 11 episodes, I feel like the show's a little landlocked, and I don't, no pun intended there, but it just feels like, when we're on the Colossus and certainly Castellon, I think it just feels landlocked. It feels like the galaxy's not as big as it was maybe with Clone Wars and Rebels, and maybe I was just spoiled because we were constantly traversing the galaxy and going to different locations, and we'd sit still for a little bit with like Rebels, but then it was only a matter of an episode or two before we were suddenly shoving off and going somewhere else. But I think the writers are very conscious of this though, so that's I guess maybe a positive here, because we got like signal from Sector 6 and then Station Theta Black. But really, if we're spending 80% of our time on the Colossus, I think those stories are going to have to be better because sometimes I wouldn't say they're bad stories, but they're forgettable stories, and they don't really have big moments. It feels like they're really trying to build on the kind of the main storyline about the spy, and then we get some of the First Order and how they're kind of influencing the pirates and all that. I get all that. That makes sense, and it's okay. It doesn't, not crazy about it. But again, if we're going to spend that much time on the classes, I just feel like those stories need to come up a little bit more because I tend to kind of tune out after a little bit. But I mean, it's that it may just be me personally. Maybe the setting for the classes isn't as big or as expansive as I want it to be, even though they've got a great, there's a lot of different characters and there's a lot of different alien types and people coming and going and all that. I don't know. It just feels like it's not as big as or grander as I want. But I think that'll fix itself in time.
Yeah, and so in Secrets and Holograms, which I think was the second to last episode, when I finished watching that episode, this is the one where Kaz and Toradoza have a bit of an adventure, if you want to call it that.
Mhm.
But by the end of the episode, I didn't really feel like their relationship was all that much more strong or stronger than it was before, even though they kind of went through a semi ordeal. The whole episode it felt a little disjointed for me of what they were trying to accomplish as the First Order started moving in. And those are the moments I think that those are the opportunities you've really got to seize on to say, okay, we're gonna give these two characters a reason to be together and a reason to have start building some sort of relationship, and then I kind of feel like it went somewhere. I'm not saying romantically or anything like that, but it feels like it moved to a different level. It moved past a certain threshold, and it just Kaz is just as uncertain and unclear about things as he was when they started the episode.
Mm.
And those are the things that I'm getting a little bit frustrated with was, okay, Kaz, we get Kaz as a loser. He's making some inroads with Yeager, but we get he's a little bit loser. But at what point can we start to have the team feeling like more of a team, if you will?
Yeah.
I thought we were getting there really early on, and we've kind of abandoned that. And part of that's because Kaz is out with Poe, or he's getting pulled in these different directions now. But I want to see the Yeager's team really start to come together more as a team, have a reason to band together, even if they're still a little dysfunctional.
Yeah, that's a good point, and actually have that. I'll come back. Let's come back to that because I want to touch on that when we talk about what do we want to see before this season's over, because that's actually one of the bullets I have in here. The only other two lowlights that I have is I've come to realize that I'm missing the Force in all of this, and I miss Jedi. Yeah. Even like Rogue One had some aspects or elements of the Jedi and the Force, but it's been few and far between so far with Resistance, and that's okay. I mean, again, it's only 11 episodes in, but I got pretty excited during the Children of Tehar episode when Kylo Ren's name was mentioned. And you kind of heard a little bit of that music. That's another moment that stood out for me from music wise, but right. That's when it hit me like, whoa, yeah, right. We haven't really had any Jedi or Force sensitive people or anything else. I think we'll get more, especially if you've got like Dave Filoni providing input into the story team. And my guess is that at some point we'll get aspects of the Force and Jedi and all that later on in the show. So I'm not too really worried about that just yet.
I don't know that I agree with that.
That he won't influence it in that way?
Yeah, I really think they're going to try to hold off from doing as much of that as possible for as long as possible.
Yeah.
I really feel like they're trying to differentiate the show as much. Like this is outside the realm of all the Jedi and Sith antics. This is outside of that world, and this is just normal people trying to get by.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of, so on that note, I guess my third criticism is some of the episodes, they don't seem, how do I say this? They seem very IP neutral for me. And I'm probably going to get crushed by some of our listeners for saying this.
Okay.
But be gentle. I'm a really nice guy. It just at times, it just feels like this could be like any kind of science fiction cartoon. Even though we've got all the sound effects and the music and we've got BB-8 rolling around every 5 minutes on the screen, it just, I don't know. It's some of these episodes don't feel like they're grounded in Star Wars. And maybe that's the point I made earlier, that maybe that's where the Force comes in and the Jedi come in. For me, that's always been Star Wars. And maybe it's me just I need to adapt and just kind of get over the fact that we're not going to get any of that stuff in this show, which is fine. But then I guess I'll go back to my first point, which is I just want to see those stories be a little bit stronger. Then if we're going to say this is Star Wars, I'd like to see those stories get a little bit stronger. So I don't know. It just seems very neutral at times. It doesn't seem like it's Star Wars. I don't know how better else to say that. Did you ever get any of that sense in any of these episodes, or were you pretty much okay with?
No, I've had the same thoughts go through my head that it is very weird. We're used to having something with Clone Wars. I remember back when we got pitched Clone Wars that it was going to focus more on the clones, less on the Jedi. But it still very much became a Jedi and the clones type of story where we still had a lot of Force, a lot of lightsabers, a lot of Jedi politics, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Rebels kind of had the same kind of premise, right? We thought we weren't going to see as much of that. It was going to be more towards A New Hope where these types of things don't exist, but it kind of went back to the same thing. went back to lightsabers. It went back to the Force. It went back to the world between worlds type of thing, which is fantastic and great. This shift, they have to really work at bringing someone in to change that dynamic at this point. And it is noticeable because it's like, what is missing from this? Not saying good or bad missing, but what's not here that I'm used to seeing?
Right.
And you're right. It's the Force, it's lightsabers, it's Jedi. It's really, it's some sort of evil presence. We have the First Order in this nebulous type of world, but we don't necessarily quite have a central villain yet to cheer against. We recognize Phasma. We're starting to get introduced to Von Reg and Pyre, but we don't really have a reason for our heroes to engage them directly yet. Yeah. They haven't done something on screen to really, push us to that edge. But yeah, so it is noticeable. You're not crazy for saying that. And it does feel that way. And it is kind of missing for Star Wars. I still think it feels like Star Wars. I think there are moments where it definitely feels like Star Wars and they're hitting those notes. But this is what people kind of wanted though, too. Some people really, really wanted something that was outside the Jedi, that was more grounded. It was more you and me trying to do something in the middle of nowhere. And what does this whole battle mean to us?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and how does this war impact us? And
exactly,
yeah. So again, more on that in just a little bit here. So let's talk about the highlights then. So, and I forgot to mention these were kind of non-character highlights, if you can. But what were some of the things that have stood out for you so far?
Well, I like the X-wing battles. I think those are really well done. The lighting that's where the lighting kind of works.
Mm-hmm.
The fires in space. I mean, I know fires in space don't work, but they look really brilliant. They remind me of 80s cartoons when I was growing up, 80s and 90s cartoons. So I like that. Like you said, the sound effects are there. The visuals are there. They're a lot of fun. They're fairly exciting to watch, and it's just, who doesn't want to watch X-Wings in space animated? I still think that's the coolest thing on earth. I don't know why. Just lifelong dream of watching X-Wings in a cartoon.
Right.
And so that's generally one of my favorite non-character moments of the show is just finally getting some space battles in a cartoon.
So I have some really quick ones here. I think I like seeing this breadcrumb trail of how the First Order rose to power. We're getting more of, we're not seeing it happen yet, but we know it's happened now, especially, again, and I'll go back to the most recent episode, but Station Theta Black, there's a moment in there where we find out that they've just mined, was it Daelanite or Deadlanite? Yeah, thank you. Yeah. They just mined all of that because they were making a lot of blasters, right? So this kind of speaks to that. But there was one moment in that episode, and this is another thing that stood out for me as a highlight. I think it's Leia that makes the comment that there were a number of senators that were profiting from the mining of that and the selling of these arms. And so that kind of speaks to a larger systemic issue that the Resistance had and the New Republic had, because they allowed the First Order to kind of rise to power. And well, they did it because some of them were, greedy. They knew that they were making and manufacturing these blasters. They knew that they were being sold to the First Order and they were getting parts, but they turned a blind eye because they were profiting from this. So that was a really neat little, it's less than, 15 seconds, 30 seconds long, but that speaks to a really large issue that we got from, like the Bloodline novel and certainly, just in general, the rise of power of the First Order. So I thought that was really cool that they threw that piece in there. I'm going to throw in the animation as a highlight again, even though I gave it some, feedback about being too clean and pretty earlier on. But I think, it's some of the more visually appealing animation that we've ever seen in Star Wars, honestly. And, and even, if you can compare that to the Clone Wars and Rebels, and those shows respectively had their moments where it was absolutely beautiful and brilliant, especially Clone Wars in the later part of the seasons. But so I don't want to take anything away from those, but the Resistance just has that sheen, and when we need the sheen, like you mentioned with Phasma and the X-Wing fighter battles, it delivers in spades. So I think that's really cool to kind of finally see that. I touched on the Easter eggs. There's a crap ton of those. We'll get into some of those a little bit here, which is really cool. And then I like the use of the pirates in the show. At first I was like, okay, pirates, but it's interesting because they're using that as the First Order is really using them. Sorry, so I'm going to spoil something. If you're not caught up, you need to get caught up now. Probably should have said that before we started the show. But they're actually using pirates to kind of force Doza's hand into allowing the First Order to use the Colossus, or at least the planet, to as a fueling station. So it's kind of schemy, if that's a word. It's not. That they're actually using the pirates to their own advantage. They're paying the pirates to go and attack these guys, and then saying, "Oh, look, see, you really do need our help as the First Order. Why don't you allow us to come in and take over?" So I like that aspect of it. I think it's a unique, interesting. It's almost like the what Palpatine did in during the Clone Wars, just on a very
similar
micro level. But it's kind of a cool little scheme that he's got going on there. So
what's good, and some of the things that are said in those of when will the First Order leave? Well, it's really difficult to give you a definite answer on that.
Yeah.
These things are complicated with pirates,
right?
So it's just all the writings on the wall, and Doze is smart, But yeah, I'm liking those elements. I'm with you. I'm with you all the way on the introduction of the First Order, and you start to get this flavor of how they're growing, and their presence is being felt more often. There's an uncertainty and an uneasiness about their presence in general. And so it's nice to see that growth and that threat kind of looming over and becoming more tangible and more palpable.
Yeah. We also get Leia's suspicions in that episode too. She's, very suspicious of the First Order, that they're maybe bigger than people are not giving them credit for. One thing I want to point out about the pirates too, and this is going to speak to you earlier. I think you are 100% right in assessing that we're hearing a lot of sound effects from the original trilogy, because if you look at the pirates, and you've got to pause it, because when they're on screen, there's a lot of action. It's moving really quickly. But if you go back and pause that and you look at the character designs that they've come up with for the pirates, they are rehashing all of the original trilogy, like armor from the stormtroopers and guards and everybody else. And they've gone so far as their ships as well. Like, they've taken all these pieces from the original trilogy ships, and they've kind of made these Frankenstein-looking type vehicles that the pirates are flying around in. So, and that was all purposely done. I think this came up on, I think it was Resistance Rewind, or one of those additional content features. They were talking about the design of the pirates, and that this was a conscious decision that they made, that they wanted to pull bits and pieces from the original trilogy, specifically the Galactic Empire, to kind of show that they've piecemealed all this together, and that's what they're using. So, yeah, really
cartoon kit bashing,
right? Let's talk about the characters themselves, and there's a lot of characters. We're not getting into all of them, but just quickly, who if you had maybe top 3, top 4 characters that have stood out for you so far in the show?
I really like Tam, especially we started getting more of her in Sonara's score. So I liked seeing her on screen. Like I said, I don't know what it is. I'm really enjoying that. The one I'm probably most favorable towards, though, is I'm liking the Yeager-Kaz relationship. It continues to grow.
Yeah.
And again, Scott Lawrence is doing such a fantastic job with Yeager, but their relationship is doing really well. They're actually making progress for the most part, and I've been really enjoying that. And I'm also liking to see Doza on screen more. I wasn't really sold on him first time we met him, but now you're starting to feel this weight of really he's trying to protect the station, and how do you best go about that, and the challenging decisions that you have to make when you're a leader,
right?
And when do you choose between one bad thing or another bad thing? And he knows they're bad. And it's also cool that we got, again, spoiler, but we have, they see an Imperial uniform in the closet. So what does that history look like now? So a little bit of a teaser there. One of my favorite character moments so far, though, has got to be between Marcus Speedstar and Yeager, though. The Platform Classic I think is probably one of the better episodes we've got so far. And you really start to feel, we finally get this idea of what really happened with Yeager's family. It wasn't some First Order attack or some attack on a village type of thing, that it's actually family
His own brother,
that caused. Yeah. I mean, it was really powerful, and it was really crazy that it was such an adult theme for a kid's show, and it caught me off guard. And I loved the episode. I thought it was really good. I thought it was a great lesson in forgiveness. Was it as, I don't know, artistic of how they got there, or was it very smooth? Not really, but you had to try to cram it into 22 minutes.
Yeah.
But I was really surprised it was such an adult theme, but it was a really good dynamic between them, and we got to see a little competitiveness from Yeager too. So we got a little more dynamic range of that character.
Yeah, I would agree. Those are all good points. In fact, I had the same thing down for my notes on Yeager and Kaz and their relationship. I threw Bucket in there. He's not on screen very long.
He's kind of disappeared lately.
He has disappeared, but when he's been on, it's just been great because he's just like this old, decrepit robot that doesn't give a crap about anything. And it's even more than like Chopper just had an attitude. This is this is very much the old get off my lawn. This is like the Crowley of droids out there in Resistance. So I've really enjoyed when he's on screen, and I like his look too. Like he's a astromech droid, but he's every part except for the essential parts are still on him, and then they just slapped this helmet on top of him that wobbles around and stuff. Anyways, a really cool look.
I keep waiting for him to come out with a beer in his hand.
That's all that's missing. I really do. Is him holding a beer and flatulating somewhere in the corner every 5 seconds, but
scratching something here or there.
Right, hand down his pants. I mean, that's exactly how they've kind of laid that character out, and I think that's what they were going for, and I think they've done a really good job. So he's been fun to watch. Hopefully, we'll get more of him later on. I think I don't think we really have anything different in terms of my notes. I put Commander Pyre on here. I just want to see him more. And I guess if I could, one of the characters that really I was expecting a lot of, and maybe it's too early to have a true assessment just yet, is Von Reg. I thought he would play a more significant role. And yes, he's had his moments, and we've had a battle with him and that kind of thing. I get all that. But, him and Pyre are just kind of, they're there. They're cool characters. They report to Phasma. They look different. But, I don't know. Pyre just is interesting to me. We don't know a whole lot about him, nor do we know a lot about Von Reg really at this point. But those are, when they're on stage, it definitely has my attention. And maybe it's just the silver look or the shininess of the animation itself.
Yeah, Pyre definitely piqued my interest a bit in this latest episode. So I'm hoping to see more of him. But yeah, I don't know where Von Reg has disappeared to. I guess they haven't been in space much, so maybe he's a one-trick pony.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was cool too that his TIE fighter had it was able to jump into hyperspace. It had a hyperdrive on it.
Exactly.
So and that was always a big no-no during the Galactic Empire, but maybe that just speaks to the technology of the First Order. So it's kind of cool. All right, we're getting short on time here, so let's talk about the. I guess, do you have any feedback on the sequel characters, specifically, Phasma and Poe Dameron, anything that we haven't covered just yet? I guess thoughts on those two characters and how they've tied into these first 11 episodes.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good point. It's more about how they tie in and are they working inside the episode. We're not really learning anything new about them. Yeah. They're not really changing our outlook on them. If anything, like Poe lately has just cemented more of what we've seen with Last Jedi. Mm-hmm. And we talked about that last week about, his impulsiveness, and we had Leia telling him, do not engage over and over and over. And yet he just casually dismissed it. So it's a consistency. So I'll give them that. It's consistent, but they're working pretty well within the episodes. They show up when they need to. I think this is what we expected, maybe a little more frequently than we thought maybe it would happen. But I think it's working pretty well so far. Phasma, I still probably like Phasma a little better. The episode with Poe where they are with the Kowakian monkey lizards, I still just don't really like that episode. Mm. It was just a little too over the top for me, and especially with Poe. But I like hearing Oscar Isaac on screen. It's cool. But he's keeping the show moving as far as what's Kaz's spy life looking like.
Yeah.
And keeping that rolling forward. But other than that, it's nice to have them there, but I don't know that they're really, adding a whole lot.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Isaac's done a good job. At first, it was not, I think we talked about
it. He was a little bit flat.
Yeah, it was a little bit flat, but I think he's kind of leveled out for me. He seems like Poe again, especially in the most recent episodes. But with regards to Phasma, we got so little of her in the movies that anything from here on out is, just added bonus. So I've really enjoyed seeing her. She hasn't really had a really defining moment for her or anything that I could, she could not be Phasma. She could just be a commander in some kind of stormtrooper armor. And so far, it really wouldn't be any different. But the fact that she is there and it is her and she looks great and we hear the voice and Christy does a great job. I think that's all good stuff. So, the only thing I would say in Station Theta Black, we got to see her running around and jumping around, which was kind of new because we don't really see her move that much in the first two movies. So I'm honestly looking forward to, maybe even more. You made a good point. I think we got more so far than we were expecting, and maybe that's going to continue, or maybe we're getting it all up front. I don't know. But I'd like to see her pull out her spear, because if that comes out, right? She's supposed to be a pretty powerful character with that spear. So I'm waiting for that little moment, I guess, for her to have kind of something there. The other,
when you talk about Easter eggs, that moment where she's falling down and going down the catwalk, it was very reminiscent of Last Jedi.
Yeah,
I mean, it was almost, it felt like almost verbatim.
Right. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
And then I guess for maybe not direct tie-ins to the sequel characters themselves, but just from some of the Easter eggs that have stood out. We got the Guavian Death Gang in one of the episodes. And we got the mention of the 5 Sabers race. So that's pulled from the Bloodline novel. The First Order sentry droids, we saw those in The Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and Battlefront 2. Phasma, I think, is able to kind of drop one of those down. We got one of those in there. We had a mention of coaxium. In fact, I think that it's been 2 episodes now where they've mentioned coaxium or hyperfuel, if you will. One of which was, again, going back to what you mentioned earlier, was the death of what's his face is Yeager's family. That was kind of part of it, was the hyperfuel itself. There was
the maneuver on Rishi. So call back to Clone Wars, where Rishi Station had a couple of episodes there.
Yeah, you're right.
That was what got Marcus Speedstar into trouble.
Yep. We got a space slug in the video game with Kaz and Tora when they're kind of playing that. That was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then one of the really cool ones, and this is one where I did have to go back and pause, is when they show Tora's room, we get a stuffed Ewok. There's a T-16 Skyhopper. There's a Bosch doll of that Leia dressed in Return of the Jedi. There's a Max Rebo, and then there's a Phoenix Squadron poster, which is on the wall. And that one is so,
I didn't catch that.
It's so quick. You got it. They put it in there just intentionally that the shot starts halfway with the poster. So within a half a second, if not less, it's off the screen. So you've really got to pause it to kind of see that.
Wow.
So anyways, they've done a good job of kind of putting that stuff in there and really kind of calling back and tying back to a lot of the different movies and shows and everything else that we're all familiar with. So,
well, one of my favorites was on during Station Theta Black, when they're actually on the station. In the background, you can actually see a processing vein and maintenance catwalk, like you had from Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
And that was really cool to see that in the background.
Yeah. So they've just done a really good job. And I know I gave it criticism for not feeling like Star Wars, and maybe it may not, again, I don't think that's direct feedback to the settings and the Easter eggs and sound effects and all that. That's all there. It's just something else. I don't know what it is. But anyways, before we go, let's talk about maybe some of the things that we want to see before season 1 ends. So let's start with you. What are you looking forward to here, maybe over the next, 10 to 12 episodes that we get in at the second part of season 1?
Yeah, I think generally it's continuing. What are we building towards? Start giving us an idea of what is this climactic, either mid-season finale or season finale of what to expect later on, to say, okay, this is the point that we're building to. Like, why should we, and this isn't me being critical, this is just me asking the question, why should we continue to care about the show, right?
Yeah.
So what is going to keep you coming back week over week that's building up to something that feels like you're going to get that payoff, or you're going to get that cliffhanger to where you're going to watch season 2, right? And we flirt with it just a touch, and we're early, so I'm letting that play itself out. But second half of the season, and we saw this a lot with Rebels in particular, where first half of the season, okay, there were some moments. Second half, wow, really good. Lots of great moments. It really felt like we were going somewhere. So we've grounded ourselves. Now I want to see this direction push forward. I want to see Kaz continue to grow up a little bit. He can keep some of the antics. I think that is part of who he is as a character, but start moving this thing forward. I like the idea of whatever's happening with Doza and the pirates. If we're going to get the First Order in there, let's really bring the First Order in there and give Pyre some airtime here too, because that seems like a character that's going to stick around and give us some really great moments later on.
Yeah. So for me, I'd like to see. I want to see who the informant is for the First Order. That's kind of like I guess probably the main storyline in here. That even though they kind of touch and go with it from time to time, but they've all but shoved Doza in your face as the most likely person, which is a red flag and a good indicator that he's not the informant to the First Order.
It doesn't have any reason to be.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and I think they tried to give you a reason for him to be when you mentioned earlier about the Galactic Empire uniform in his closet.
Right.
Because we know he was part of the Galactic Empire, but we also know that there were a lot of people that just did it because it was a job, and consciously and morally they weren't in alignment with what Sidious or Palpatine was doing. So anyways, I think they've done a lot to try to make you think it's him. So it's definitely not him. I want to see that get kind of finalized at the end of before season 1's over. But really, I think my biggest thing with this show, and hopefully I'm right, hopefully they're going here, but I do want to see the transition into the Force Awakens timeline. We're supposed to only be 6 months away from the events in the Force Awakens in Resistance, and I think this would really, really shake things up quite a bit for the characters, and it could change the show drastically. There's nothing even today that would suggest that we need to stay on the Colossus, and it would open up like a major highway for like the A Squadron and Team Fireball to play a bigger role in the fight against the First Order now that they've come to power and their powers come to fruition. Honestly, I think it would be a huge character development too for the pilots themselves, because you would suddenly have these the pilots from A Squadron and Team Fireball that would be kind of forced to leave this bubble of the Colossus and get thrust into the war. So then you've got an opportunity here where you could maybe have them start. You could have new characters kind of training them or taking them under their wing, no pun intended, from like Cobalt Squadron, Black Squadron, Blue Squadron, Stiletto, Dagger, Blue and Red Squadrons, all the ones that we know about, including the Starfighter Corps that we see like in The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and then the Poe Dameron comic. They introduced all those characters that we know are about to play a big, huge part in the Resistance. I think it would be cool to kind of, you could start pulling in like the Snap Wexleys and the Karen Coons and Elo Asti, who's already made an appearance in The Children of Tahar. You could throw in Fossil and Paige Tico from Cobalt if you want.
Tally,
yeah,
bring Tally back.
Bring in Tally, right? What's the Duros name from the Poe Dameron comic?
I can't remember.
Lulo, I forget his last name. Lulo, whatever his name is. But anyways, my point is, you've got all these like B, C characters that have been in comics in these novels that really haven't hit or impacted the main storylines in any way. That if suddenly we're in that time where The Force Awakens has just happened, they're going to be looking for anyone and everyone that they can get to be part of the Resistance. And here you've got this group of people who, for the most part, like the ace pilots, sit around and do nothing but race and blow up their ships, waiting for something to happen. I think this is going to be a big wake-up moment. I think this is going to be this could be a big event for them. And it's certainly, I think, again, just to hit on this again, I think it would really change the direction of the show in some really unexpected ways. And I think I would like to see the person in charge of all of that being Yeager. I think this would give him an opportunity to jump back into things, even though, he's already kind of hinted that he's never going back. But then you kind of get shades of, well, he probably could come back if he really need to. And we know he's still a well-adept fighter and a flyer pilot, right? From the racing episode or whatever. So I could see him in that kind of a Hera role where he's like the leader, the mentor, the more responsible adult of this ragtag group of kids that are going to have to grow up pretty quick because they're thrust into the middle of a war. So hopefully that comes, maybe that is part of what will come eventually in the show. Maybe it's season 2, maybe it's season 3. But if they do it at the end of season 1, I'd be totally cool with that as well.
I'm going to assume your word path was intentional, because what we got from Leia was that they started mapping a course to the unknown regions where they think that the First Order is gathering strength. Mm-hmm. So it's very possible that we'll see the unknown regions, and we'll have, again, this is a reason why they might start doing scouting missions or get the aces out and doing something else, although they're supposed to be guarding the station. But we have that, and then maybe we'll even see Batuu and Black Spire outpost. And not to tie it back to Disneyland and stuff like that, right. But we saw it in the Thrawn books already, so it's not outside the realm of possibility for them to visit one of those planets on one of these, scouting missions again, especially as they start to get more and more intel. Because I agree with you 100%. I want to see this tie-in with Force Awakens, and if for only being 6 months out, either they're really good at keeping the lid on this thing, or which doesn't seem probable, or
It's imminent.
yeah, or they're just not really setting it up very well for us to say, no, really they are this really strong, powerful presence, and we're just keeping them at bay for storytelling purposes right now.
Okay, so final thoughts on the first half of the show.
Yeah, not bad. A little bit better than what I expected. Really dig the animation. I think it has opportunities to do some good things. So going to keep watching. I tend to batch them up a little bit, so I watch 3 or 4 at a sitting rather than keeping up with it every week, because it's a lot to try to remember. So it's easier to come back and talk to it with you if I've seen them recently. But overall, not bad. I generally like the characters. I think they have some promise and want to see where they go. And again, willing to see how the whole first season plays out. New shows are always tough to get off the ground. So give them the benefit of the doubt, get a full season, and we'll reevaluate once we get to that point.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm definitely watching the shows. I mean, I'm not turned away by any means. I won't say that I'm like pining for the next episode, although maybe I'm a little bit there now with the last episode. But prior to that one, I haven't been, anticipating, I've got to, like with Rebels and Clone Wars, I was always waiting. I was like, God, I have to wait a whole week before I could see the next episode. And with this one, it's kind of like, okay, yeah, I'll catch it when it comes out. And it may not be the first night. It may not be the fourth night, but at some point I'll get caught up. That's not a reflection on the show itself. I think it's just a more of the state of where the show's at right now. I still fully trust that this will continue to get better as time goes on. And my hope is that Disney and Dave Filoni allow the team to kind of grow and nurture this show, as I believe, really networks should do for all shows. I think we're in such a weird time with TV in general, where a show comes out and if it's not hitting big numbers within the first 6 months, they pull it, cancel it, and you never hear from it again. And you think about all the really big shows that made it. There are a lot of shows that made it, but it took them 2 or 3 seasons to get their legs. And right. I don't think we're fair anymore. I don't think we give shows the opportunity to do that. I can't see that happening with this show because of who's behind it and the fact that it's the Star Wars IP. I think they're going to give it a good run of 2 to 3 seasons at a minimum. So, but yeah, my guess is this will continue to get better and better as the years go on, as the episodes go on, as the seasons go on. So, so far been fun. There's been some, again, we've talked about the highs and lows, but overall it's a good show. I highly recommend, if you're not watching this already, go take a look at it, watch it. And certainly if that's not doing enough for you, maybe invest some time in some of the special feature stuff that you're getting as bonus content on the StarWars.com and YouTube channels. So
exactly. Yep.
All right. Well, with that, we'll end the show. But before we go, we got a couple shout outs. You want to kick those off for us real quick?
Yeah. Archangel and J-Dub over on Discord this past week, we had an amazing Jedi and Sith code discussion.
That was fun.
It was so much fun. And I just wanted to call those guys out and tell them thank you for really a lively and interesting and really thought-provoking discussion. And we hope others will come out and join us. It's really the beauty of Discord, being able to interact with everyone. We had another one. J.A. Davis left us an iTunes review saying how much he enjoyed the comics coverage. So we definitely appreciate that. That's been a fun adventure for us as we get our feet wet and get a little more experience doing that and our different take on it, if you will. So I think we've been enjoying that and hope to do more as the themes and the story arcs kind of present themselves of what we think you guys might be interested in hearing.
And on that, yeah, we've got Darth Vader. We've got that coming back. So starting next year, sometime next year or January, I think, hopefully, we'll come back and revisit that Fortress Vader arc. So
yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm so excited. And then just some quick reminders. We'll put all the ways you can contact us on social media in the links. But just as a friendly reminder, we're on Pandora now. So we've already seen the numbers starting to grow there in terms of downloads, which is cool. So thank you guys for, adding this show to your collection. And we should mention that it is a lot easier to find us now. You can go do a search for Cantina
Thank
Cast.
goodness.
Thank goodness. In the Pandora app or on the website. So if you're a Pandora listener and you want a one-stop shop to get your podcast, or at least this show, along with the other music that you're already streaming, use the app. We are on there and available for you to listen to. So, and I guess thank you to the Patreon members. We've had ads in our shows from time to time, and we do that to kind of keep the lights on. Mike's got some costs that he has to incur to keep the show going. So if you're a current Patreon subscriber, thank you so much. That money goes a long way to ensuring that we can keep all the back catalog in place, and we're paying our dues so the show stays on the air. And if you're not, please consider donating, even if it's 99 cents or whatever else. Just it's much appreciated. And again, it goes a very, very long way just for the operational stuff that we have to cover as far as expenses go. So thank you to our Patreon
Thank
members.
you, everyone.
Yeah. All right. Before we go, what are we doing here? We're taking a break. We'll be gone for about 3 to 4 weeks, but we may have a surprise for you. Maybe just kind of a holiday shout out here sometime right before Christmas.
That groan you're hearing is Mike thinking he's going to edit everything.
Yeah. So yeah, we may do something here, kind of a one-off thing here for the holidays, but we should be back in about 3 to 4 weeks. Just where we want to see our families, and you guys want to see your families too. So happy holidays to all of our listeners, and happy New Year to all of you as well. Final thoughts?
Nope. Yeah. Happy holidays. We appreciate everyone. We will see you very soon.
All right. See you in 2019.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.